Hello, I'm Susan Cole.
And I'm Matthew Hodson.
And welcome to a very special edition of aidsmapCHAT in the studio.
So exciting, it's our first time here, and we have the most incredible guest. Her name is Winnie Byanyima, and she is the Executive Director of the United Nations Task Force on HIV and AIDS, UNAIDS. Now, if I'm going to get this right, she has 7 given names. One of them is Chaudhary, which means I can be whatever I choose to be. Now, Winnie has been a freedom fighter. She has a master's in engineering. She was elected to the Ugandan parliament 3 times and was the Ugandan ambassador to France before becoming the executive director of Oxfam and now, since 2019, the executive director of UNAIDS. Winnie, welcome to aidsmapCHAT.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here.
Oh.
Winnie, it's an absolute delight to have you in the UK, and it was wonderful to finally meet you in person at the Stop AIDS event on Monday. But I see you've been all over. You're going to be all over the UK, meeting with community groups and members of parliament. Has there been anything about the UK's HIV response that has impressed you?
Absolutely. 2 meetings that I went to this week have fascinated me about the response in this country. Today I was at the food chain. This is a community, a really loving, caring community that provides food and community to people living with HIV. Many of them are volunteers in that project. And I saw this amazing, what is it called? A long chain of
The quilt?
Quilt.
The AIDS memorial quilt.
Yes.
Isn't it wonderful?
Oh my God. And I was able to put there my brother's name, who I lost to HIV AIDS, and to remember him amongst all those people. It's an amazing project. So the community, that the response here is grounded in communities and activism of people living with HIV, asserting their dignity, and the diversity there. There were people of all races, men and women, all ages. That for me is the first thing, that the humanity of people, their dignity, their respect is there. Then I met the NGOs. That's where I met you. Oh God, they've got power. They've got expertise. They've got knowledge. They serve, they lead, they influence the government. I had Andrew, was it Andrew? I can't remember the name, who represented Stop AIDS, speak to the all-party parliamentary group.
Oh, James, my
yes,
son.
James Cole, yes. He opened.
Oh, you're in so much trouble, Winnie, now. You forgot her son's name.
Are you going to throw me off the show? But then he opened the meeting, set the tone, put the issues that are real for the response in the UK and globally before the members of parliament. So to see that strength of civil society rooted in communities leading the response was for me the biggest thing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
The UK's doing really well in terms of those targets around HIV testing and access to treatment and actual viral suppression on treatment. And sometimes when I talk to people, wherever, people sort of think, oh, well, it's always going to be the Western countries, the high-income countries which are doing better. But actually, there's remarkable examples of countries which are doing really well all around the world. Lots of nations in southern and eastern Africa are, really hitting those targets. What lessons can we learn from the global South, internationally?
Yeah, there is much to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And true that if you are living with HIV and you're living in this country, you have a greater chance to live a long life, a healthy life, and to be a happy person, because there are services here. And I think about 98% of people living with HIV in this country are on treatment. So that's great. But like I saw today, there are other challenges here too. But first to say that if you're a gay man in this country you will have a much higher chance to live well and a healthy life than a gay man, say, in my country, Uganda, where you're hunted down, you're criminalized, you're afraid to go for testing or treatment. So those differences are there, huge inequalities depending on where you live, the laws that are there, the community, the stigma, the discrimination in the community. All these things make lives different depending on where you are. But I did see here also that through the lives and the stories of the people I met at food chain, that there's loneliness, and that many of the people living with HIV are cut off from their families, and this is not even just with one race or one community. I met there a wonderful white man who said his family rejected him and he hasn't had a Christmas card from them for 20 years. I saw a man from Pakistan who is gay, who also is cut off from his whole community, lives alone. So there are issues of stigma, of discrimination, of loneliness, even here. And that's why the communities are important. They provide that. That's where they meet, and that's where they find friends.
You raised inequalities, and of course that is at the heart of the new UNAIDS strategy for 2021 to 2026, which is end inequalities, end AIDS. And you also talked about the situation for gay and bisexual men in your home country, Uganda, which, I mean, there's a piece of legislation which is they're trying to put through at the moment, which is going to make things even worse.
Yeah.
What power does UNAIDS have to actually fight for kind of those equalities bits of legislation? What are the levers you pressed?
That word is important. You said, what power? That's so important. That's the key. Where is the power to create the level ground for people? We have some power, but our power is not enough. We have the power of being intergovernmental. We get governments to come together to make commitments. Like, for example, we had a political declaration made at the United Nations just in July. In that declaration, the governments committed to repeal criminal laws, to achieve equality in services for all people, whether you're gay, transgender, you're a sex worker, whoever you are, however you define yourself, equality. So we are able to hold them accountable on those promises. We set targets for the next 5 years. So the intergovernmental process that I am leading helps governments commit and hold them accountable. But that's not enough. We need the power of people too. We need civil society, organized citizens to challenge their own governments to hold them accountable too. So we play different roles. Mine is to mobilize the international community, like your country, to offer support to developing countries. It is to make the commitments. It is to remind them, and civil society to put pressure, to pile pressure as citizens, claiming their rights as citizens. So we work together.
That's absolutely wonderful. Yeah. But I understand that the UK government has cut funding to UNAIDS and to other organisations working on the HIV response by 80%. What impact is that going to have?
Now, that is true. It's unfortunate, especially because the cut is abrupt. It has come suddenly. The UK is in many ways the home of the global HIV movement, because many of the innovations, the pressure to bring treatment to everybody started here. But now all of a sudden we have this cut, and this cut came suddenly. It is unprecedented, it's disruptive. So what are we losing? We've got teams in more than 70 countries. Some of these teams, we're going to close them. And what does that mean? We are the people who rush in, for example, to respond when there are crackdowns against LGBTI people. So we won't be there to respond when there's a crackdown in these countries where there are criminal laws. We offer a platform for communities of people living with HIV and others to come and sit at the table with government planners to plan services for themselves. We won't be there in those countries to help the plans for services to respond to the real needs of people. It means that young girls, adolescent girls, who need services to prevent HIV, to prevent teenage pregnancy, that those services won't be there for them. So we'll get more teenagers getting pregnant, lives destroyed of little girls. And let me tell you, 4,200 adolescent girls will this week get newly infected in Africa. Every single week, 4,200 adolescent girls. Our work is to try to stop that. Now that's weekend. So really the British cuts, and I'm here to try to persuade the British government to restore that funding. It's not a lot of money, but its impact is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope that by appearing on this show, we might be able to encourage people, certainly in the UK, perhaps to write to their MP and to make their feelings known, because I think it's about mobilising communities, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But the excuse that the government, I think, has used for this, and I can imagine this is quite an international thing, is obviously there has been this other virus recently, and that has created not only challenges in terms of provision of healthcare and HIV care, but also it's created a challenge in terms of the world's focus, because we are so close now to ending HIV. We have the tools. How do we get the focus back on HIV for this final push?
Yes, sometimes I think it's the way politicians work. They tend to be one issue focused. So now it's COVID. And in many ways, the space to talk about other problems isn't there. But we're seeing a real impact, especially in poor countries, who already have weak health systems. We're seeing them so stretched, they don't have even the things that you take for granted here, like gloves for health workers, like masks, oxygen running out in clinics, all because the hospitals are flooded with people with COVID. So we're seeing pushbacks. We're seeing reversals of some of the things that we had won in developing countries. I don't know about what's happening here, but I remember in the early phase of COVID that you were having similar challenges here of not having enough to spread to all diseases. That's happening still in Africa. There's no vaccines. And so they are locking down. By locking down their economies in order to stop spread, people are locked at home, have no food, have lost jobs, have lost homes because they can't pay rent. And people living with HIV can't move sometimes to go to get their refills. Gay people get arrested for being together in shelters and are accused of spreading COVID. So the situation of COVID is pushing us back and we are losing some of the gains. But it's all not bad news. We fight on. We keep pushing and we put some of the resources we had in other things into helping communities to be served. Yeah.
Absolutely. COVID has shone a light on existing health inequalities, but the inequalities where it comes to access to the COVID vaccine has been absolutely shocking. At the moment, we're discussing having children being vaccinated and about booster doses, yet so many people around the world are yet to have a single dose. I know that you've been one of the leaders in the call for COVID vaccine equity. What needs to happen now to change that?
Yeah, what's happening today in the world is not only shocking, it is immoral. It does not make sense, economic sense or health sense. I can even say it is racist to watch people in other countries around the world die as some people reap super profits and governments watch and allow a handful of companies to decide who gets vaccinated, how much supply is there, what price it is at, and who buys. And governments are sitting, and they're the ones who put in the money to make the vaccine. I mean, the AstraZeneca vaccine made in this country was 97% funded by the British taxpayer. So the government has the power to put it at the disposal of other companies to put the technology there so it's mass produced. But it hasn't done that. Although I have to say AstraZeneca is more licensed to other companies than Pfizer, Moderna, and all the others. But still, the leaders, our leaders, should by now have gotten behind a global plan to ensure that this vaccine, the recipes, are shared in every region and companies make enough vaccines for everybody to have the double jab or the single, whichever it is. But today you have 60% of people here vaccinated, 2 jabs, and we have in Africa doctors, nurses still dying because they haven't even had one. What is that?
So here in the UK, I mean, they've started talking now about third jabs for
Yeah.
people who are particularly vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that does include people with HIV who may not have achieved viral suppression
Yeah.
or have a very low CD4 count. So, I mean, I think it's kind of quite a challenging question. It's like, should we be saying, no, we don't want a third vaccine if you are in that situation?
No. It's good. And it is great that people who are vulnerable are being put in front of the line and are being protected. We support that. But it should never be about this one not having and this one having. Because the issue is not even the price. The issue is that there's not enough. And we could have enough. You can't have 5, 6 companies producing for the whole world. Everybody sees that. You need more companies to produce. But that means less super profits for the 5. But why should their profits come before life?
It feels extraordinary
Yeah.
because, well, it's something I say to everyone's boredom, Susan's especially, I can imagine, global problems demand global solutions. And particularly
Yes.
with a virus like this, which mutates, we will not be beyond this until we are able to make sure that everyone is safe.
Absolutely. I can shock you and tell you that I met a man I know in New York recently. He's a Ugandan, but he's also a US citizen. So I met him and he said he came running from Uganda to get his vaccines in America because it's available there. But let me shock you. He said he bought himself a negative certificate to fly. He actually didn't do the test. So he could be positive, but he wanted desperately to travel. It's possible to get a crooked certificate and come. So you cannot close your borders and say, I'm sure that the virus won't come here. There will be ways people will cheat and come in and bring a more deadly virus. So we need to vaccinate everybody to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned that you feel that racism is at the heart of some of the inequalities that we're seeing with the COVID vaccine, but that's also the case in relation to the HIV response, that people of colour are disproportionately affected by HIV, and we're seeing that in the UK. What can we do to address the institutional and systemic racism that we're seeing in healthcare settings?
It is there. There's no question about it. The data we have tells us so. We know, for example, that if you are gay and black and living in the richest country in the world, America, you're still as likely to get HIV as a straight man in Uganda, poor country, low income country. That tells you that being in a rich country does not itself. There are racial disparities, racial inequalities, income inequalities, gender inequalities, all of them stacked against people who combine those. So if you're black, you're a woman, you're poor, you are more at risk health-wise. So we must work to remove those inequalities, because we know it is those inequalities that keep epidemics going. They are the ones who are left behind, so they are the ones who spread. So until we close inequalities, we can't end AIDS, we can't end COVID. So that's why we focus on bridging inequalities. That's why community building is important, because communities level the ground, make everyone equal, and we need to put communities at the center of responses. Every community.
Absolutely. Women bear the brunt of the HIV epidemic. Young women are twice as likely to be diagnosed with HIV than young men, and so many intersectional challenges such as gender-based violence affecting women living with HIV. What can we do to address the inequalities that women are facing in relation to HIV?
That's a great question, because what we see, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, we see that in this age cohort of 15 to 19, 6 out of 7 newly infected young people are girls, are adolescent girls, 6 out of 7. That higher level of vulnerability comes from actually the social norms, the fact that there is a toxic masculinity that's spread by us, even mothers, about what it means to be a boy. You don't take no from a girl because you're a strong boy. So first we have to change mindsets about how boys see themselves, also how girls see themselves, that you can say no and you can stand your ground, and to know your body, to go to school and be taught about your body, the choices you have when you have sex, to have protected sex. Some of this stuff has to come from the school space, from the family space, and governments must invest in it. Often they think, oh, that's NGO work. No way. They should invest in challenging social norms. They should keep girls in school. That is a safer space. And I like the fact that your government has made it a priority to support girls' education. And I want to work. I spoke with the minister yesterday, and I said I want to work with her on putting girls in school, but making sure that the school also teaches them sexual education. Because being there is good, it's not enough.
Winnie, it's so great to meet you. We've only got time for 2 more questions because I'm getting signals. But I mean, we've got to ask about the targets. You know, we didn't quite hit the 1990 targets in 2020, which was 90% to be diagnosed, 90% of those on treatment, and 90% of those to be virally suppressed. We're hoping that we will actually end AIDS by 2030.
Yeah.
But in your heart, do you think we're going to get there?
We can. But what got us here, and we've come a long way, 27.5 million people are on treatment today, another 10 are not. So we've come a long way. Most people are on treatment, living well. This last mile of 10 million, getting them on treatment and closing the infections can happen. But we have to do things differently. What got us here won't get us there. We have to do things differently. 1990 wasn't achieved for the whole world, but some countries made it. And rich and poor. Mm-hmm. Switzerland made it. Swaziland, poor, small, made it too. Swaziland made it too. Mm-hmm. So that means it's possible. rich and poor can all reach the target. So we can. But like I said, we have to close the inequality. We have to see who is being newly infected, who is dying, and close the inequalities that make them vulnerable. We can get there. And now we have said these targets are not just about treatment, getting people on treatment, staying on treatment, being virally suppressed. They are also about ending discrimination, ending stigma, decriminalizing. So those are also in the targets now.
It's so important.
It
Yeah,
is.
absolutely. And one final question, Winnie. We have viewers, people living with HIV all around the world. What message do you have for our viewers?
My message is that power to you. You are a full human being. Claim your rights, claim your dignity, and no one should condemn you to a life that is not equal to other lives. You matter as much as everybody else, and stay in power.
Wonderful.
Stay in power. Thank you so much, Winnie. It's been such an incredible joy to meet you. You're such a powerful figure yourself, and we're really grateful for the work that you do. Especially, let's smash those inequalities. Let's make sure that everyone has power.
Well, thank you for giving me this platform, and you do an amazing job to keep people talking about this issue and support it.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you
Thank you.
so much, Winnie. Thank you for everyone for watching. Thank you to the glorious Disruptive team for having us in the studio. And we hope to be back and see you soon.
See you later.
Bye.